All right, we are going to talk about probably the second favorite topic that everyone has. Obviously, the first topic that everyone just loves talking about is taxes. Well, right behind that is bookkeeping. So we're going to talk about bookkeeping in this specific video. Bookkeeping by far is the most important part of the tax process. If your books aren't in decent shape for taxes, we just can't actually do your taxes. So when sellers come to us, they're usually in three different camps. The first camp is they have no books whatsoever. We see a lot of sellers that come to us, especially on the lower revenue ranges, they have no books whatsoever. So if you're in this camp, it's all right. Next, camp number two, you may be using some sort of tracking system like Google Sheets, Inventory Lab, Seller Board, or a tool like that, but you're not actually doing real bookkeeping. Or you may also be using QuickBooks or Xero itself, which most of the time e-commerce sellers just don't do properly. That's camp number two. Now, as we roll into camp number three, you may have actual accurate bookkeeping. You may have actually hired a bookkeeper to do the bookkeeping in Xero or QuickBooks. Might actually be done properly. This does happen from time to time. Well, if you're in camps one or two, which means that you don't really have really good books, I'll walk you through what you'll need in this video to be prepared for this upcoming tax season. And if you're in camp number three and your bookkeeping is solid, that's great. You're likely already ready to go. We'll ask for accountant access to your books during onboarding. And once we start your tax process, our business tax accountant will assess if the books are ready for taxes. If they're good to go, great. If not, then we will give some suggestions to potentially working with our bookkeeping team to make sure everything is correct, or they'll recommend that you talk back to your original bookkeeper to fix some various things that may need to be fixed. But if you're in this camp, there is no need to go any further in this video. This video is mostly for people who have not gotten their bookkeeping straight. All right, for the rest of you, let's discuss what is needed to get you ready for taxes. There's two key parts of having your books ready for taxes. There's inventory and there's expenses. The third part, which is revenue, we'll talk about that last. We generally resolve from other methods. All right, so let's talk about number one first, which is inventory. We need to have an idea of how much inventory you purchased throughout the year, how much was actually sold, and how much you physically have on hand. If you're using inventory management software like Inventory Lab or Seller Board, you likely already have this taken care of. As long as you've been updating your buy costs in these tools, it automatically calculates your in-stock inventory at Amazon. And some sellers may also choose to track this in Google Sheets or Excel. If you've done this and you've updated everything in those spreadsheets, we can use this information as well. Now, a big key piece here is that you want to do a full calculation of your inventory as of December 31st. If you're watching this before December 31st, that's great because you have plenty of time to get prepared to do this before the end of the year. If you're watching this after December 31st, you'll need to pull reports to be able to do this next step. What you'll be doing is you'll be calculating all the inventory that is at Amazon or other third-party fulfillment centers, which may be called prep centers, inventory in transit you've already paid for, any returns or death piles, and then anywhere else you may just have inventory. What we call this is a physical inventory valuation. We actually have a worksheet that can help you with this, which can be found on our website. All you need to do is simply scroll to the bottom of our website at talloogadvisors.com on any page on the website and find the link for client resources. On that page, you'll see a link for our physical inventory valuation calculator. All right, now we have inventory straightened up. Now we need to know what your expenses are. And for tax purposes, you're going to want a link between your documentation and then the original place you purchased the items. What this means is that if you paid for expenses on your credit card or they've been taken out of your bank account, you will want to log linking these purchases to what tax categories you're claiming them in. So for example, if you've been tracking your expenses in a tool such as Inventory Lab or Seller Board, this is a piece that in that software that's missing. It's a critical piece that's missing. So in order to prepare taxes, you effectively have two options. Number one, do it yourself. Number two, hire us to do it. All right, so let's talk about some do-it-yourself options, which for a lot of smaller sellers, this is what a lot of them do. There's basically two ways you can do this. Option one, You do it in spreadsheets like Excel or Google Sheets. Step 2 is you do it in some sort of accounting software such as QuickBooks or Xero. All right, so let's talk first about the spreadsheet option. We've put together something that actually makes this significantly easier. On that same page you found the physical inventory valuation calculator, you can also find our business tax worksheet. You can also find it underneath the resource tab at the top of the website, and you'll see business tax worksheet right there. On this business tax worksheet, what we've done is we've broken down a list of all the most common categories that we use for e-commerce businesses. We've also given you examples of what falls into every single category. So what you'll want to do as part of this business tax worksheet is you'll download all of your bank statements and credit cards that you use for your e-com business. And honestly, it's best to download it into a CSV or spreadsheet, not those squirrely PDFs. All right, so what you'll do is once you have those CSVs or spreadsheets, you'll start copying and pasting the information in to the business tax worksheet. All you need to do is make sure you do just the business transactions. If you have personal transactions on some of these cards or bank accounts, ignore those. Don't copy them in. Now, once you have these copied in to the spreadsheet, you can start categorizing every single one of those transactions with the categories that make sense. And as you do this, it actually adds up all the totals in the worksheet. And then what you do is you just go through all of your expenses throughout the entire year for all of your credit cards and bank statements that you've used throughout the year. And once you've done that, we're pretty much ready to roll. Now, a few things also to note on the business tax worksheet before we move on. I actually recorded a 20-minute video that's linked in the worksheet that shows you exactly how to use it. Relatively simple to use, and just follow the directions as shown in that video. Also on that spreadsheet, there's also a vehicle mileage log, which allows you to help keep track of your vehicle mileage as applicable. All right, so let's say, for example, you're like, I don't really want to use spreadsheets. That's not my cup of tea. Another option is to use a tool such as QuickBooks or Xero. By doing so, you can connect your bank accounts and your credit cards to those tools. Now, by default, QuickBooks and Xero's chart of accounts just don't align properly with the way they should be set up for your style of business. We would strongly recommend going into our business tax worksheet and seeing all the various expense categories that we have listed on that worksheet and putting those into QuickBooks or Xero. And what you're going to be doing is putting them into the chart of accounts. There's multiple videos on YouTube that can show you how to do this. After you've done this and you've connected the bank accounts and credit card accounts, then you can categorize your transactions. And you want to make sure you categorize them into those categories that we've listed in that business tax worksheet. There's also videos on YouTube that can show you how to categorize transactions in both of those platforms. All right, so the easiest way to do this, the simpler way, is definitely in a spreadsheet in Excel or Google, because most sellers are just used to using spreadsheets. But if you want to try and play with QuickBooks and Xero, you can, but keep in mind those are entirely new tools that you likely know nothing about, and you do have learning curves on both of them. All right, so don't let this stuff fool you. I've mentioned a couple different ways you can do this yourself, but they are not proper bookkeeping solutions. Even if you use QuickBooks or Xero, which are both accounting software, and you follow the steps previously discussed, honestly, you're only really doing about 30% of what should be done for real bookkeeping. But the key thing here is all we're trying to do is get you ready for taxes. And both of these methods are usually sufficient enough for us to be able to complete your taxes and have stuff prepared for the tax man if you ever were to get audited. It's not a perfect solution, and that's something I would recommend as you grow. But as a smaller business and just starting out, it's usually okay for that first season or two. You should have an accurate bookkeeping solution that you can rely on for a month-to-month basis as you grow. You'll want to be able to look at your financials and make business decisions off of those financials. Using the methods above are just a really big stopgap solution just so we can do your taxes this year. That's all it really is. One other note, if you do your books yourself, we don't actually provide any additional training or help outside of that other than the tools and the videos we provided. And so it's one of those things where you truly are doing it yourself. It's not something we're going to help you with. And also, If your books are still not adequate for taxes even after doing these steps, our business tax accountant may recommend that you work with our bookkeeping team to fix them at their normal hourly rate. So if you realize that you just don't have time to do this work and you're like, this is just too complicated, I don't have time, don't want to deal with it, and you want us to help you out with this, we do have a bookkeeping team that can help you with your books for this year and, of course, moving forward. We can either do a scaled down process just so you're ready for taxes, which honestly is a cheaper option, but it's not full bookkeeping, or we can do a full scale bookkeeping where we go back in time and clean up your books for the entire year. We only do this scaled down version just for tax cleanup, and we do not offer it for ongoing bookkeeping services. Again, we're effectively doing the exact same thing as you would be doing with the spreadsheets and Xero or QuickBooks, which again is not a proper bookkeeping solution. We're mainly just doing it for tax purposes. Moving forward, especially if you're $10,000 per month in sales or more, we strongly recommend having a proper bookkeeping solution. Now, if you want help with your bookkeeping for us to clean up for last year or moving forward, all you have to do is just email us at advisors@talotax.com and we'll be able to give you a quote for your bookkeeping. All right, so we've covered inventory and expenses. The last thing I mentioned is we also need to deal with revenue too. Now, you will receive 1099-Ks for any businesses that are above the limit. And for 2023, that would likely be above $20,000 in sales or 200 transactions. Now, what we'll do is we will ask for reports for each of the selling platforms that you use. If you're using a selling platform like Amazon or Shopify, which are pretty much the two largest ones, we will ask for read-only access to those platforms and we'll just grab the reports ourselves. So that's something you will not have to worry about. But if you sell on smaller platforms, we may ask for reports from those platforms. So that way we know what the appropriate revenue was. And then we also know what the selling expenses are for each of those platforms to make sure you receive the proper tax deductions for each of those. Also, if you happen to have any loans that you have on the business that are not otherwise included, then we will ask for those documents as well. Some examples of this would be bank loans, EIDL loans, other government loans, maybe PayPal loans, or maybe other loans that are just outside of the Amazon ecosystem. And the reason why I say the Amazon ecosystem is because all of the Amazon loans are generally lumped into the reporting that we get from Amazon. Whereas if the loans are not through the selling platform, usually they're going to be someplace else, which is why we ask for those documents. All right, that should just about wrap it up. Now, bookkeeping just isn't remotely a sexy topic, but it by far is the most important part of the tax process. Hopefully, the things discussed in this video will help you have your bookkeeping ready for taxes. All right, that's about it. Thanks again.